Dollar cost averaging, or pound cost averaging for us Brits, is talked about quite a lot. And for good reason. It's a solid investing strategy. It's the process of investing a sum of money in chunks over a set period of time, instead of just going all in. It removes the risk of the market screwing you over and crashing a few days after you dump a ton of money in. Instead, if you just keep investing chunks of money as the market falls, then you'll be buying the dip and you'll do just fine. But what if everything that you've heard about dollar cost averaging is a lie? Today we're going to do a side-by-side comparison of dollar cost averaging and lump sum investing to figure out which investing approach is best. Remember, I'm not a financial advisor, so if you want independent advice tailored to your own circumstances, then you should seek that from a professional, not from a guy with a googly-eyed bucket hat.
What are you talking about?
Now, for our old-time subs, you probably know that this is a topic that we've already covered. But back then, my presentation was shocking, and it is an important topic that needs recovering. Anyway, we've got a brand new setup, so why the hell not? Let's get into it. Right then. Dollar cost averaging is a process of investing your money periodically over a set period of time, instead of just chucking it all in the market and running the risks of losing it to a market crash. Of course, it makes sense. Who would want to chuck all their money in the market for there to be a market crash and then you just lose all your money at once? Dollar cost averaging allows you to spread the risk over a set period of time. It's hard to see the downside. If the market falls, then you keep buying at lower and lower prices. But if the market goes up, then you're just buying something that keeps on going up. It's a win-win situation. On the other hand, investing a lump sum of money is scary. But just because something is scary doesn't necessarily mean that it is the wrong thing to do. In 2012, Vanguard did some research where they compared the dollar cost averaging approach to lump sum investing. To figure out which was best, they imagined that they had £1 million to invest in the markets, in the US, the UK and Australia. For the lump sum investing side of things, the analysis was pretty easy. They picked different 10-year time periods running from 1926 up to 2011 and invested all of the money and see how it did after 10 years. So, as an example, they started with £1 million in January of 1926 and then figured out how much they ended up with in December of 1935. And then they went to February 1926 to January of 1936 and so on. Because they kept on shifting the timescale monthly, they ended up with over 900 data points. The final investment amount after 10 years was the benchmark that the dollar cost averaging approach had to beat. For the dollar cost averaging side of things, they cost averaged £1 million into the market over a set period of time, and then stayed fully invested after that was done. So, for an example, over a 12-month time period, they took £1 million and divided it by 12, which is around £83,000. Then they invested around £83,000 each month for a year, and then they stayed fully invested for the remaining 9 years. They repeated this over different 10-year timeframes, whilst also changing the amount of time that they cost averaged into the market. So they did it for 6 months, then 12, 18, 24, 30, up to 36 months. Now, I'll just remind you that most people swear by dollar cost averaging, as it mitigates the risks and keeps your money safe. But what did the results show? On average, in the US, UK and Australia, when investing with a 60-40 portfolio, lump sum investing beat dollar cost averaging 67% of the time. So 2/3 of the time, chucking all of your money into the market at once wins. Makes it sound less scary, doesn't it? They repeated this for a 100% equity portfolio, and then again for a 100% bonds portfolio. The results were much the same, with lump sum investing winning most of the time. Then they looked at what the effect is when you increase the amount of time that you dollar cost average in for, as all of that data was showing a 12-month period. As the time frame increased, the results only got more in favour of lump sum investing, with the 36-month dollar cost averaging approach losing out 90% of the time. So, no matter which way you look at it, lump sum investing beats dollar cost averaging. But why is this happening? And more importantly, what can we actually learn from this? Well, if you were paying attention, then you might have noticed the title of this research, which is a bit of a giveaway. Dollar cost averaging just means taking risk later. This literally explains why it loses out to lump sum investing. It works exactly the same as the classic phrase, time in the market beats time in the market. And here's why. When people think about dollar cost averaging, they are of course thinking about the downside. They don't want the markets to crash after chucking a lump sum of money in. But you need to understand that this is essentially time in the market. If you're scared that the stock market is going to crash and then you don't put money in it because of it, you're timing the market. You're essentially betting that the stock market is going to crash. But remember, the market goes up more often than not. Plus, stocks and bonds both have positive expected returns. So, the more time that you hold stocks and bonds for, on average, the more money you're going to make. If you have a lump sum of money and you choose to dollar cost average it, all you're doing is leaving a large sum of cash in your portfolio which is left uninvested. By doing this, you're obviously taking on less risk, because holding a bunch of cash is much less risky than holding a bunch of stocks. And then, because you're taking on less risk, on average, you tend to get less reward. So let's flip it on its head. If you decide to lump sum invest, then you're going all in on the markets and you're taking on the maximum amount of risk. Because of this, on average, you tend to get rewarded. And this is why lump sum investing wins 67% of the time. So we know why it works. But does that mean that we should always lump sum invest no matter what? Well, the research is all well and good, but the one thing that it doesn't consider is emotions. If you had £1 million lying around, putting 100% of that in the market straight away would be terrifying. If the market was to crash just after you did that, then you'd feel terrible, and you probably wouldn't want to invest ever again. Maybe you'd get scared, and then you'd withdraw some money to keep some of it safe, which would be even worse. If you were to sell after a market crash, you'd be locking in some huge losses. Our actions, which stem from our emotions, have a huge part to play on the stock market returns that we achieve. So it's important to consider that we need to stick with investing strategies that are going to help us keep our heads cool through thick and thin. Lump sum investing is not going to be for everybody. Not everybody is going to be able to hack it, so not everybody should do it. Just because Vanguard shows some research that on paper you're going to be better off, it doesn't mean that it is what you should do. This leads us down the classic discussion of investing with a strategy that you believe in, because the more you believe in it, the more likely you are to stick with it through thick and thin. This is exactly why me, Vanguard, or some random guy on YouTube can't tell you which approach is best. You need to figure that out for yourself. Each individual circumstance is going to be different. But do remember that if you are struggling with choices like this, then you can get a financial advisor to help you. Besides, one thing that we haven't even considered is that most people aren't just going to wake up with £1 million to chuck in the markets, or even £10,000 for that matter. Dollar cost averaging is so effective because it is in line with the way that most of us get paid at work. Most of us receive some sort of income every week or month, which is why it makes sense for us to invest in the market every week or month. By investing every time we get paid, or at some point in the month, we are automatically dollar cost averaging without even thinking about it. Is this a bad thing? Absolutely not. As long as we get our money into the markets whenever we can, then we're going to be on the right track. Ultimately though, the situation of being dumped with a ton of cash can actually arise, whether it be through an unexpected insurance payout or an inheritance. So it is good to think about the problem now so that you have an idea of what you would do if you were put in that situation. You can either follow the research, playing the numbers game and doing everything that you can to block out your emotions, or you can take the route that more people find comfortable and slowly increase your risk over time through dollar cost averaging. At the end of the day, the choice of what to do is absolutely yours. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. If I was in that situation, I think I'd know what I'd do, because I'm a big believer in data and I think that would pull me through. But would you do the same? We'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic in the comments, so let us know which style you would prefer. Hopefully you enjoy the new setup, and it actually looks a bit better than me just stood against a blank wall. Also, the first person to figure out what this googly-eyed bucket hat is all about, I'll pin your comment if you get it right. If you have any content suggestions, then don't hesitate to let us know in the comments, because we're always really keen to know what you guys want to see. On that note, we'll leave it there. See you next time, everybody.
What are you talking about?